All right, welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us at the Strategy and AI combination that transforms decisions into results. It's a pleasure to have you here today. I know that there is a lot of noise around AI right now and a lot of pressure on teams to figure out what actually matters and where to put their efforts. So today, we want to cut through all of that noise and focus on what is real, what creates impact, and what leaders need to rethink. Just a quick housekeeping here for everyone. We will be taking questions at the end. If you want to ask any questions, please drop them under the Q&A tab found at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to them at the end of the presentation here today. My name is Umair, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. I am an associate director at NISM. My background is in engineering at Amazon, so I've seen how top companies use data and technology to kind of move fast. I now help enterprises and enterprise leaders cut through the noise around AI and help them focus on the decisions and workflows that actually create impact. I have the pleasure of welcoming today's speaker, Sajid. Thank you for joining us today, Sajid.
Great to be here. Thank you. And thanks everyone that's joining. I see we have quite a few people that have trickled in just the last couple of minutes. So I hope everyone's having a great afternoon or evening or morning if you happen to be in Hawaii. And really excited to have this conversation.
Thanks, Sajid. Sajid is the EVP of Growth and Delivery at NISM. He has been in the industry for the past 20 plus years, focusing on business strategy, technology, and entrepreneurship. Sajid has led digital transformations for Macy's, Gap, Albertsons, and many other Fortune 500 companies. He is a startup founder, an advisor, a mentor at UCLA Anderson Venture Accelerator, and he is passionate about turning strategy and technology into sustainable, high impact results. Pleasure to have you here today, Sajid. Thank you for joining us. So, Sajid, just at a high level, what do you see happening inside companies today that tells you that AI conversations like need a reset?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's all around us, right? There's so much activity when it comes to AI, and people are wondering where is the impact? Most companies are running pilots or exploring different generative tools, building POCs, but the results kind of not really matching that hype. We're going to get into a little bit of about that, where the numbers are kind of panning out. But broadly speaking, today we want to show you really a different way to think about AI and not necessarily just as a technology initiative, but really as a strategy and importantly, decision transformation capability. So we'll speak to what we mean by that, especially on the decision transformation side.
Awesome. Today a lot of companies are investing heavily in AI, Sajid, but we see very few that are seeing actual meaningful outcomes. From your perspective, what are kind of some of the hidden reasons the activity isn't translating into impact? What should leaders be looking at differently when evaluating their progress?
Yeah. So, as is very common knowledge, AI adoption is very high at this point. Between 70 to 80% of companies are already using AI, depending on, which survey you're looking at. It's usually in a single business function, or it could be across multiple business functions. So AI seems to be everywhere, but it really seems to be everywhere kind of in this more superficial way. So, just to share some numbers around it, according to a 2025 study, so hot off the press, 78% of companies say they use AI in at least one business function. That's up from 55% 2 years ago. So obviously a pretty fast uptick here, but they haven't really scaled it across different parts of their business or across the enterprise. Also, 83% of companies say that AI is a top business strategic priority, but the value extraction is fairly rare. So there's an MIT study that's received a lot of attention around how less than 5% of companies or initiatives are actually seeing value out of their AI initiatives. There's a similar study out of BCG, which looked at enterprise initiatives and found that only 5%, so similar number, are getting any measurable value. So that's revenue lift or cost mitigation, impact on workflow from AI. So these are big disconnects. So on the one hand, executives are saying AI is a strategic goal. Boardrooms are full of these conversations and pressure to enact AI. So you have all this activity, but only a small percentage are seeing measurable financial impact. So, really the question for me is, it's not about should we do AI or, where does AI fit in? The real question is, why isn't AI translating into kind of better decision making and overall better outcomes? So that's where we get into what we call the illusion of progress. A lot of organizations are kind of in this AI hangover phase. According to Gartner's hype cycle, it seems AI is in the trough of disillusionment now. So, we've seen all of this activity over the last couple of years, lots of excitement around pilots, demos, POCs, but the activity doesn't equate to necessarily progress. Most of these efforts never made it into actual business workflows where the decisions get made and are driving business in some measurable way. So the reality is, it's not really the technology that's preventing companies from scaling the AI. A lot of it has to do with the organization that's around the enterprise that exists within the enterprise.
Makes a lot of sense. Yeah, you mentioned the AI hangover, and you also mentioned that less than 5% of companies are seeing measurable impact. Um, we see so many companies stuck in pilot mode, right? In your experience, like why do organizations make early AI progress, but then stall when when it touches real workflows? Like what's actually happening underneath that keeps teams busy but not better?
Yeah, so I think AI pilots look great when it comes to the pilot being executed in isolation. But what ends up happening is that when you try to scale that to the rest of the organization, things start kind of falling apart. And it's because of a few different dimensions. One, on the scale side, there are no clear architectural decisions around how this is going to fit in. There isn't clear changes around workflow, what the new workflow will look like based on the AI that's being implemented. There's also an issue around ownership when it comes to IT versus business. So these really kind of play into that. And then in terms of what they lack, really it comes down to, what is the vision around this AI initiative? Who's going to be held accountable? Why is it being driven? And then I think most importantly, in my mind, what's the path to production? So, it's very easy to kind of think through all the different use cases where AI could be adopted, but thinking through where does that actually create a full end-to-end completion, or where does completion happen? I think that's where a lot of the stumbles happen by enterprises. And I think a lot of that is also driven by the fact that AI is treated in different silos. So, you're running a pilot with an IT group or with some group that's focused on AI, right? The center of excellence around AI, or maybe there's somebody in a functional group like marketing that is, spearheading an AI initiative. But those things start to unravel when you really try to um, scale because some of those foundational elements aren't there. So, I think thinking through why pilots fail, I think it's a number of these dimensions, and I'm happy to get into more about kind of what that means and how companies can do different. So here we have information on what we think, in our experience, where we're seeing the missing foundations. In other words, the root causes of why scale isn't happening and why it's more of an organizational challenge than it is a technical challenge, about picking the perfect LLM or picking the perfect kind of RAG to figure out how an enterprise will adopt. Um, there are these five areas that we kind of see as repeatedly coming up within enterprises that we're working with that are preventing them from really driving AI in the way that they'd like. The first is around data and the architecture not really being aligned to decisions. So the shape of the data, the timeliness of it, the context of it. So you have so much data, but low frequency, a lot of it is siloed, it lacks context. And companies really don't necessarily have a data shortage, they lack this decision context on how to make the most of that data. The other thing is around systems. So you have these legacy systems that slow, everything down, even for companies that have transformed quite a bit in the last, decade or two in terms of their massive digital transformation initiatives. There's still a lot of debt around how the next wave of tech incorporating AI, how the current environment adapts to that. So you have outdated infrastructure, or you have infrastructure that's not ready. There's still a lot of batch systems or non-API architectures that we see out in the market, even though a lot of companies have focused on these areas. The reality is it's still a consideration. So AI really requires event-driven systems, real-time ingestion, kind of vector stores, GPU planning, and a lot of that is not readily available for enterprises to kind of kick off. The other big area is security and compliance. So, I mean, this is massive, especially as companies think about exposing their data and leveraging different LLMs. You have IP leakage, you have concerns around hallucinations, data residency restrictions. You think about, shadow AI. So, a lot of this is actually getting revealed when AI projects are getting put in place. It's not that the security is slowing down the AI. It's that the AI is kind of revealing where a lot of these outages might be. Another big area is governance, especially around who owns decisioning. So, not a lot of clarity on decisions between, say, merchandising, ops, finance, supply chain, engineering departments. And I think that becomes another challenge for companies, especially as we see it amongst our clients. So there's kind of this org chart confusion that starts to get revealed between so many different parts of the org, but if you think about lots of companies have a chief digital office, a technology office, a CIO, a CISO, and all of these are somehow tangentially or directly related to tech, and then you layer in everything else in terms of marketing and finance and so on and so forth. So, leadership treating AI as kind of an experiment within different groups becomes challenging and becomes kind of reinforces some of these silos. And that's really the last big point here is around leadership. It's so important for leaders to think of AI as a P&L priority rather than kind of an experiment or POCs because as we've been saying, we've kind of gotten past that phase in the journey of AI. So a little bit more on where organizations get stuck, just to kind of bring some of this together. Um, so when AI starts touching real workflows, there's actually some level of clarity that's uncovered around where organizations may have otherwise challenges. So, there are these hidden dependencies that get revealed. You have approval systems that may be outdated or irrelevant. So, it's addressing those. There's mismatched incentives across different parts of the organization, and then the fragmented ownership. So much of it comes down to these organizational elements. So, you know, I kind of mentioned this, but it's not that AI is creating complexity around these issues necessarily, but it's exposing a lot of it, and that's where we think scaling AI systems really requires systems level thinking than versus just isolated pilots or thinking of them as separate experiments, because I think that's where real value unlock can start to happen.
Thanks, Sajid. So we've talked a lot about, how organizations are silos, pilots are siloed. We've talked about why AI stalls and kind of what get exposed when we bring it into real workflows. But I think that kind of raises the big question here, right? Which is when does AI work at scale, and what actually separates the companies that get real value from AI?
Yeah, I think, the one way we have been thinking about this is companies have this new executive mandate, and it's around decision velocity. So companies seeing kind of the most value from AI aren't the ones that necessarily the most advanced in terms of their models or have, picked the best model out there or figured something out that others haven't. It's a big part of it is they're the ones who make the decisions better, and by being faster around them and being more deliberate and intentional. So, the way I would explain this is, they're identifying high value recurring decisions. So let's say you're a retailer and you run a lot of promotional campaigns. So it's what's the right promo campaign to run? Or replenishment is a big consideration day in and day out. You're trying to figure out, how to keep inventory levels correct. Then looking at that topic, allocation or claims routing, if you're, say, in an insurance environment, or how different things are getting prioritized by engineering departments. So all of this kind of thinking around the high value recurring decisions can help reframe how enterprises are approaching where to solve with AI. And essentially, they are they become more systematic about upgrading these decisions, and then that can be driven by AI. So um, what's interesting is most of the money or the returns on AI initiatives is coming from what I would call, boring AI. So things like forecasting, optimization, recommendations, things that have been around for a while. And we were using ML in the past, and AI got incorporated into it, and now we have some elements of advanced AI and LLMs. Um, so, I think that's an interesting kind of way to think about the business as well, as not always chasing the flashy, shiny stuff, but really what are some really boring things that we could revisit, rethink in today's environment because there's so many unlocks that weren't available to us maybe just a few years ago. So, that's where I come back to things like promotion campaigns or forecasting financial processes or replenishment and stuff like that. And kind of to put this all, to summarize all of it, it's about using decision velocity as a differentiator and AI as an enabler kind of underneath that.
Understood. So we talked about, using decision velocity as a differentiator. Can you bring that concept to reality for us? Like, what does this decision-focused approach look like in an actual organization? What conditions have to be there in place for that kind of impact to scale? And for leaders, what are like practical steps they can start taking right away to move in this direction?
Yeah, so we put together a framework around this, like any good consultants,
Mm,
and I've kind of thought through at a high level, and there isn't always, as always, there isn't a one size fits all approach, but at a high level, there are these five key steps that we have been talking to our clients with to help them think through uh, what a decision strategy leveraging kind of best or better in class organizational capabilities looks like. And the five steps are one, identifying high leverage decisions. So decisions where if you make a tweak, it could really have outsized impact for you. And again, these are things that maybe a few years ago were just not possible to look at because the technology wasn't there. So this is a lot of, a lot of the stuff in this bucket is the stuff that's, we've just been doing it like this forever. And that's how we will continue to do it. Those are the places that I would especially encourage companies to look at when you're in a room with folks that are, saying, we've always done it like this. I would double click into that. I would really challenge that in a way that's novel. The other is creating insight loops. So having a way to um, provide continuous feedback and having a looping system for your organization to extract real insights from the initiatives that you're running. And then the third is where you start applying the right AI technique. So, uh, you know, before that, it doesn't make sense to go and identify the LLM or the POC. It shouldn't be POC driven. It shouldn't be kind of tech driven. It's kind of in step three. Once you've identified the right decisions, you've built a way to create insight loops. You apply the right AI technique. You embed it into workflows so that it actually goes all the way through to production. It's a part of the business. Even if it's a very small sliver of activity, it's about, in my mind, seeing it from beginning to end. So it goes truly all the way through. And then that way, finally, step five, you can measure it, you can scale it, you can really do something with it. If MVPs and pilots sit at the very front of the process where they get tried and kind of explored, but they're not carried through all the way through to the end, then I think that's where again uh, they are more inclined to die, and you don't see the results that you would want. So if kind of companies think through these five steps, I think there can be quite a lot of value, especially in terms of how to frame their approach. On the next slide, we actually have an example of how we've seen this with one of our clients as we've been working with them. So a large retailer that's a client of ours was losing quite a lot of money, orders of magnitude in the tens of millions annually from stockouts. So essentially, their shelves were empty too often, and replenishment wasn't happening the way that it should be. So instead of like, all this uh, piloting and innovation kind of theatrics, we kind of got down to what's your top strategic priority? Their answer was pretty clear. It's around shelf availability. So keeping that in mind, we really focused AI on that problem, and we brought together POS systems, the supply chain process and systems, their promotions process, signals from their stores, predictive models, all of this to improve their forecasting. And we achieved double-digit improvements on forecasting for getting the right product on the right shelf at the right time. And that resulted in within 6 months, stockouts dropping significantly, revenue getting recovered very heavily. And then overall, you just have a much more delightful customer experience when if you're going into the store, you find the thing that you're looking for. So, the impact really came from elevating the one decision around how much product should be where and when. It all fundamentally came down to that, which helped us identify, what technology to use, how to implement it, how to do it across various systems. And furthermore, I go back to that point I was making around it's fairly boring AI that we're talking about, in that it's, a forecasting solution compared to a lot of the really, snazzy stuff we see out in the market, but it has impact. And I think that's key to kind of how we approach all of this.
Wonderful. Sajid, when companies are looking internally, trying to evaluate how to scale AI, do you have any sort of um, advice on how leaders should evaluate themselves, honestly, against a lot of those criteria?
Yeah, so I think for that we've laid out kind of 6 questions to ask yourself and really think through in terms of readiness for AI. The first is vision. So, what decisions will AI transform? So, I come back to that topic of decisions and how AI will drive those. The second is ownership. Who owns the outcomes? Again, a big issue. And this is where lack of clarity creates a lot of confusion, creates a lot of politics, all the other things we see in enterprises. The third is integration. So, how will AI enter workflows? Again, not just sitting in pilot mode, but how will it be a part of end-to-end workflows? And what is that going to mean in terms of number four, architecture and data? Can you support the needs of integrating AI real time and for contextual decisions? And then number five, are people ready? So, what's the change model? Who needs to be involved? Being very crisp around that. And then finally, the investment discipline. Are we funding the value or are we just exploring? If it's going to be exploration, that's a very different type of mindset than, are we funding actual value towards the business? So if any of these six fail, then we are finding that AI is likely to fail. And that's where 95% of companies are not seeing value from their AI initiatives. So, to kind of bring all this together, I think if there's one idea I'd want to leave you all with, it's this. AI isn't going to, replace decisions or create, um, you know, alternatives around that. It really multiplies your ability to make decisions, and that's a big part of our perspective here as and learnings here as we've been working with clients. The winners will be the companies that can redesign how decisions really get made in the first place. So, it's not that strategy in AI is a innovation initiative or is kind of a R&D thing. It should really be treated with the discipline and the rigor that you treat for anything that impacts your P&L. And I firmly think that in a few years we won't be talking about AI strategy. That concept will kind of go away. It's just going to be strategy, and AI is just assumed at the core of that. So the quicker enterprises and organizations of all sizes really start adopting that mindset, I think the quicker they'll be able to unlock those types of opportunities for themselves. I think with that, we can probably open it up to questions. Uh, Omer, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. First of all, thank you so much, Sajid, for walking us through that. I think that my biggest takeaway from this is that, AI does not fix decision problems, it really multiplies them. And, companies that win are the ones that redesign how decisions are made. And yeah, I'll move on to questions. We have quite a few in the chat. If anybody has questions, the Q&A tab at the bottom of the chat, you can add your questions there. We have a few here that we'll start with. So Sajid, can you please define what you meant by foundational outages? That was in one of the earlier slides.
Yeah, in terms of foundational outages, it's the elements of the organization, both from a organizational standpoint, as well as from a technical standpoint, that we're seeing a lot of enterprises have um, challenges with. That's where their outages are. So important to note that some organizations are better than others, but of course, leadership plays into this, the decisioning and the ability to move things through plays into this. But then it's also the security, the compliance, the governance, the infrastructure, kind of all of these things that are foundational to adopting AI, and importantly, data, right? I think a lot of companies might have pretty good level of readiness in terms of, they've got the troops marshaled and people are kind of ready to adopt and have the mindset, but the data is severely lacking, even if on the surface it seems like they have the data in some central place. It's about extracting the right level of insights from it. Does that help?
It helps. Um, so from that, Sajid, one question number two is when would the gap between these foundations be bridged in general to see real AI in action?
Yeah, I mean, some companies are doing it. You see, companies like Databricks, you see companies like Target, and many others that are able to see some good returns from their initiatives and really re-envision their business from an AI lens. Um, I don't think there's any specific timeline for the or a general timeline for across the industry. I think it's going to be business by business. But I think if companies really spearhead this in a intentional way, I think in a matter of 2 to 3 quarters, they can really line themselves up to be well positioned for the change and unlock the AI transformation that I think is going to be necessary for all organizations.
Thank you. Next question. How do we know whether our company is truly ready to scale AI versus just experimenting with tools and pilots?
Yeah, so I would go back to those six criteria that I brought up around, vision, ownership, what does integration look like, architecture, change model, investment discipline, those things. In particular, I would really think through who owns outcomes and how are those going to be driven. I would think through the data element that I just mentioned. Can we really support, are we ready for and can we support real-time type data environments, contextual decisions, so on and so forth. Um, I think you have to kind of take a pretty honest assessment of your organization against these few parameters. Um, but all in all, I think any organization, given some baseline around tech capabilities, should should be thinking about this in a deep way and should be on the path to moving from pilots out to production. I mean, if we're stuck in pilots too long, then I think that's just going to become a endless cycle of not creating the value that you need.
Next question. If AI impact depends on improving decisions, not technology, how do we identify which decisions in the business matter the most?
Yeah, so there are for any organization, there are going to be clear areas that move the needle uh, from core P&L fundamentals, right? So, yeah, if that is customer satisfaction and service, then maybe that's the area to start focusing on. If it's inventory and merchandising, maybe that's the area to focus on. If it's uh, being able to um, offer the right um, kind of product or promotion. So it really comes down to look at your first 10 to 12 uh, areas is kind of where I would start. Look at 10 to 12 major buckets and what um, are the decisions that help drive those areas. And I think it's about kind of identifying highest impact areas based on that. So I think that would be my first step in any process to identify the parts of the organization that can benefit most from an adoption of AI and have outsized impact. I think that's the key.
Thank you. Next question, I think this kind of plays into the last question that we just talked about is you mentioned many AI pilots fail because they don't reach real workflows. What's the first concrete step a company should take to move an AI initiative into production?
Yeah, so I think first thing to do is um, pick an initiative that has the potential to get into production. So, if it's like a really snazzy concept, we work with a lot of retailers. So, it's a really snazzy concept around um, creating content for your online experience. But realistically, you don't have the need or the capability to make this into something that will create value. Probably a good idea to avoid it in the first place. Focus on the stuff that's going to move the needle. And once you've done that, then figure out, okay, if I put this into different parts of the workflow, uh, what will happen? What's going to break off the bat? And is going to break so bad that it's a showstopper, or it is at a level that you want to invest the additional energy to address that concern and keep pushing it forward. So I think the place to start is thinking through um, the pilot needs to be the first step in production. And if it seems like it's going to be a exploratory kind of idea, then don't take the first step of exploration. It's probably not the best use of your enterprise's resources at this point. That isn't to say I'm squash innovation or don't try different things. Obviously, let people, and a lot of this happens organically. There are people already using AI in various ways in their day-to-day work. But I think it's about as those things get greenlit for enterprise pilots, ensuring that they actually have the legs and the momentum to make it all the way through to production.
So we'll take a couple more questions here. First, so supply chain decisions is a low-hanging fruit. What are you proposing for other sectors or industries that are highly regulated?
Yeah, I mean, supply chain is one area, but that's an example. I do encourage us to look at the low-hanging fruit because that's where we can create some good impact. So whatever that might be for your particular sector, um, if it's highly regulated industries, then obviously staying within those parameters, but it may be around if it's healthcare, it may be around how clinical experiences are handled and how those can be more dynamic. Some of this might be more internal. So, what tools you're providing to, say, the healthcare provider uh, to have a better experience for their patients. So, again, I think it comes down to where will small unlocks create outsized impact? And if it's a very regulated environment, then you have certain constraints that you need to take into consideration. And actually, that brings up a really good point. Let's not work on pilots that are just going to be killed because of some regulatory issue um, down the line. It's better to expend that energy somewhere else in the organization that can actually benefit. Some of the lowest hanging fruit is also around just engineering productivity. Regardless of which industry or sector you're in, the ability to make your engineers more productive in some way to drive initiatives that are already in flight. So I think there's a lot of different places to look at, and I think it comes down to how you want to uh, what your business's priorities are.
Okay, so next question, how do you address situations where a company's customers are not AI educated and perceive any AI as a threat to their jobs?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think this goes to kind of a broader societal issue. We're seeing, tech companies are letting people go, and it's like a unnerving job environment to be in. I think you have to, culturally educate the leadership to come up with the right messaging based on, what the issues that their employees will have around adopting AI. I think some of this is a challenge that we have to take head on. Um, I think if you expect people to build something and then that thing replaces their job, that impacts their lives. Absolutely. So, um, I think that's a big kind of uh, culture driving concern. But as is implied in the question, I think it's about educating. So, where the AI will support and where the AI will augment versus, like this is just going to be a straight replacement of any person's work. Furthermore, I think it's worth there's probably the upside of so many pilots failing and AI not really scaling the way people have expected it to be. is enterprises can point to that data for their employees, right? We're not going to be one of these companies that expects AI to come in and replace headcount. And that's the metric that we're driving against. We're going to be a company that is focused on outcomes, and it's going to be a combination of using smart people that are part of the organization and technology that enables it. So I think it's a reframing of some of that as well. But yeah, certainly a complex topic to address.
So we'll take one last question here today, and that is, you talked
I
about data.
appreciate all these questions. So much great interaction. Thank you, everyone.
Absolutely, yeah. It's all very amazing. Thank you. So last question, you talked about data readiness. Do you think organizations are running too fast on AI implementation, before thinking about the core problem of getting their data right?
Yeah, I think it's an emphatic yes. So I think companies are at, and I think it was fine too, looking back 2023, 2024, into 25, for organizations to explore and play with different new technologies, and even if they weren't actually ready for it. But now, especially in this macro environment that we're in, and most companies thinking through, what is this going to cost me and where am I going to see the returns? I think data readiness is step zero in any process to adopt AI. Because guess what? You might not need AI to impact the change that you're looking for. It might actually be um, a a data initiatives, strictly leveraging technology that you already had access to, or at the very least, I think it's important to have the baseline level of data organized, cleaned, ready, so that any AI initiative doesn't kind of fall flat as soon as it comes out of the pilot gates. So yeah, very, very good thought there.
All right. Thank you. Thanks everyone for your very insightful questions, for your interactions. I really appreciate it. Sajid, thank you for your time. Appreciate having you and walking us through the strategy of AI and how organizations can see real value through AI. Sajid, how can people find you? LinkedIn best, email?
Yeah, we're everywhere. Look me up on LinkedIn, or my email is sajid, SAJID, at nisum.com. So reach out. We'd love to hear more from the people here that attended. I thought it was a great group of folks. So thank you so much. And we're looking forward to staying in touch.
Yeah, thank you so much. And for everyone here, we'll share the recording and maybe some more resources on kind of how we can dive deeper into some of the ideas that we discussed today. If you have any questions or want to explore anything further, you can reach out to me as well, or reach out to Sajid, reach out to Nisam, and we are happy to continue the conversation. Um, uh, you can find me on LinkedIn, you can find Sajid on LinkedIn, and look forward to chatting with you all soon. Thank you again for spending your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.
Yeah, and
Take care.
happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays. Thank you.
Thank you.
NISA, building success together.